In this video, I will make an in-depth affirmation of the left and right political spectrum, and I will thoroughly refute the baseless opinions and views that have become so prevalent in the mainstream. In our present time, most modern liberals that consider themselves as grassroots believe that the left and right political spectrum is redundant, but that is far from the genuine facts of the matter. Understanding the left and right political spectrum is crucial for properly understanding political and philosophic ideologies. Over time, the left and right spectrum has been distorted through much deception, mistranslation, and rhetoric in the mainstream. The origins of the left and right political spectrum derives from the seating arrangement of the French Revolutionary Parliament. The conservatives sat to the presiding officer's right, whereas the socialists sat to the presiding officer's left. Right. In politics, the portion of the political spectrum associated with the conservative political thought, the term derives from the seating arrangement of the French Revolutionary Parliament, in which the conservative representatives sat to the presiding officer's right. In the 19th century, the term applied to conservatives who supported authority, tradition, and property. Right, Encyclopedia Britannica, 2012. Left. In politics, the portion of the political spectrum associated in general with egalitarianism and popular or state control of the major institutions of political and economic life. The term dates from the 1790s, when in the French Revolutionary Parliament, the socialists sat to the presiding officer's left. Leftists tend to be hostile to the interests of traditional elites, including the wealthy and members of the aristocracy, and to favor the interests of the working class. See proletariat. Left, Encyclopedia Britannica, 2012. The most logical scientific view of the political spectrum would affirm that the extreme right would be 0% government, as opposed to the extreme left, where you would have totalitarianism, which means absolute power and control by the government. Anarchy would be no government whatsoever, and totalitarian ideologies would be fascism, communism, and socialism. Over the past century or so, conservatism would be considered just right of center, and modern liberalism just left of center. Over the past decades, we have seen both conservative and modern liberal ideologies slowly creep more and more to the left, thanks to our politicians, mainstream media, television, and Hollywood subjecting the world to cultural Marxism. Even conservative and libertarian ideologies have been politically divided the past 40 years over policies. The reason why conservative and libertarian philosophy should not have division, especially in the United States of America, is because libertarianism is exactly the principles that the West was founded on. And conservatives are preserving that philosophy, although at times they can do a bad job. A really interesting fact is that many libertarians happen to go by the term classical liberal, because prior to the First World War, liberalism was a right-wing philosophy till it was hijacked by the socialist left. Even the most influential economists of the 20th century, Milton Friedman, not only called himself a libertarian, but also referred to himself as being a liberal. But Milton distinguished himself from being a Hollywood liberal, which we now would refer to as the modern liberalism we know today. Classical liberalism is basically the exact same philosophy behind libertarianism. It's actually that simple, relatively speaking. In the early 20th century, the socialist labor parties slowly started hijacking the left. And coincidentally, around the same time, the progressive movement was hijacking the right. The only real difference being that there was a pushback from the right, and the progressives merely converged with their comrades in the labor and liberal parties. But any way you look at it, progressivism and modern liberalism is entirely a mask for socialism or even communism. And unlike today, back 30 to 40 years ago, most Westerners knew that socialism and communism are virtually parallel and are both unsustainable and immoral systems. The most funny and ironic thing about today's modern liberal is that there is nothing liberal about them. Moreover, another really easy perspective on the left and right political spectrum would be considered state or man-given rights as opposed to God-given rights. Now, a really interesting and peculiar affair we have progressively seen is Marxists and socialists united together with anarchists at Occupy and protest rallies here in North America as well as across the world. You must pray for these people, because they live in a philosophical and ideological paradox. And the only real thing that they do have in common with each other is that they both want to destroy the system that we live under, even though their reasons may be philosophically diametrical in nature. Throughout history, the anarchists have always helped overthrow governments, and really for no particular reason other than they want to destroy the government system. Unfortunately, the anarchist demonstrator has historically helped many brutal regimes come to power, and the usual gesture of acknowledgement from these regimes to the anarchists has been exile, imprisonment, and in many cases, execution. Another myth I am inclined to tackle is the oxymoron pseudo-term that liberals love to refer to conservatism as, is right-wing fascism. First, we must establish which of the core tenets are that of a right-wing ideology. Core tenets of fascism: nationalism, totalitarianism, single-party state, dictatorship, militarism, direct action, mixed economy, class collaboration, third position, new man, imperialism. In all entirety, I don't think you could account for any of the tenets which would be that of a conservative government in the complete spectrum of the core tenets of fascism. In fact, we can actually correlate all the core tenets with that of a left-wing ideology. Many people on the left have the most confounded view of the left and right political spectrum, and it is so diluted that it really makes most sensible people come to the conclusion that the left and right political spectrum is redundant. The left-wing view is that the far left is absolutely egalitarian, whereas the far right is some form of hierarchy. This comparison has no logical basis for application other than trying to attempt to distinguish fascism, being right-wing, and socialism, being left-wing, as completely different ideologies, when, in fact, they are virtually parallel and both oppose conservatism and classical liberalism. Who is to say that any form of a left-wing political regime is not a hierarchy? Many people on the left seem to think that socialism and/or communism cannot be a hierarchical system. But we can look at the National German Workers' Socialist Party, also known as the Nazi Party, the Soviet Union, Communist China, or even Socialist Venezuela, and you can see that that is not true at all. In fact, you can take a look at every socialist and communist regime that has ever come to power and see that they have all had a hierarchical system. Karl Marx even affirmed that you would ultimately need a state, and a state is a group of people comprising the government of a sovereign state. Conclusion: no matter if you take the position of, this is the mainstream view, and this is how people see it, and this is how I see it, you still would have to affirm the left-wing view of the left and right political spectrum is completely inaccurate, unreasonable, and illogical. And furthermore, it does not represent the way it has been historically portrayed. Thank you for watching, God bless you, and I hope this enables you to properly discern the left and right political spectrum. Have a great day.